All right, hello everybody. How's it going? Welcome to Comic Book Radio. I'm your host Peter Cimetti, and this is episode 162. Tonight, my guest is WES LOCHER, writer, creator, letterer extraordinaire. We're going to be talking about his paranormal comedy with a supernatural twist, Unit 44, among other things. Because Wes is a man of many talents. So I'm sure this conversation is going to be great. It's kind of a paranormal weekend here on Comic Book Radio because tonight, of course, we have Wes. His book features these two bumbling Area 51 agents as they go on various missions. And tomorrow night, we have Robert Clotworthy coming back again, the voice of Ancient Aliens. And there was a really great conversation last time when he was on here. And I suspect it will be a great one tomorrow as well. Now, before I bring Wes on, I want to talk a little bit about this right here, 16 days left. Alternacomics.com/funding, or you guys can go to Indiegogo. The links are in the description and also in the chat. Check it out. We're 60% funded. We are, the last that I checked, we're $2,750 away from reaching the $7,000 goal. Thank you guys so much for your support. We're almost at 160 backers, and we got some time left. But we want to get to the $8,000 stretch goal because that's the King Cryptid Alterna foil card. All physical perk backers will get that as a bonus if and when we reach the $8,000 mark. Let's get there sooner rather than later. All right, before I bring Wes on, let's say hello to those of you in the chat. True Believer was here last night, and looks like he says that I'll have to watch this tomorrow. Oh, this comment was from 5 o'clock today. It's 9 o'clock right now, in case you guys need a time reference. Unit 44 looks great. It's going to be a good show. Ben, what's up, Ben? Thank you for being here tonight. Cigar Gangster's here, too. What's up, Cigar Gangster? How's it going? Sketchosaur Rex is here. So will they ever cross over with the likes of King Cryptid, Cyberfrog, or Courage the Cowardly Dog? Possibly one of the three. I'll let you guess which one. The Beampad. What's up, Beampad? Thank you for being here. AL, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. We got Unhinged here as well. It says this is where the magic happens. Indeed. Indeed. AL says, I'm here for Wes. You should be. Wes is a good dude. All right. Now, speaking of the good dude named Wes LOCHER, let's bring him on. The man of the hour. The very talented, very versatile WES LOCHER. What's up, Wes?
Oh, man. I'm so glad I do not have to follow the Ancient Aliens guy. I mean, that really almost threw me into a tailspin.
You're the opener.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't want to follow that guy. His voice is amazing.
He's a great dude. It was a fun conversation last time.
I didn't realize that you had already spoken with him. I'm going to have to go back in the archives for that one. Like, what year would that have been?
Oh, what year? It was a couple months ago, October or so.
Oh, so you guys are just like buddies. Like, you need a guest, you just call him up. You're like, I'm like,
hey,
with the
Bob,
dulcet tones.
how's it going, Bob? You know, you want to... It was interesting because he did a couple line readings in the chat last time.
Nice.
And, he did the usual, the Ancient Aliens, can it be? Is it possible? Mm-hmm. That kind of thing.
That's
but
so cool.
Some people were asking him to read some things about King Cryptid, and that was interesting, too. So I was thinking, man, maybe one day, maybe I'll have him read a trailer or an audio book or something.
I mean, that's a voice that, like, when you hear it, you may not know where you know it from, but you know that voice.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. So, yeah, either tune in tomorrow, you could tune in tomorrow, but, yeah, definitely check the one from October. That was a lot of fun.
Will do. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, speaking of you and your interest in the topic of aliens, Area 51, UFOs, and whatnot, where does that stem from?
So, man, it stems from just like always being into weird stuff. Like when I was growing up, like we didn't watch, like my family, we didn't watch a lot of like adult shows together. My parents were always good about watching like kid friendly material, but the one thing that we would always stop and break forward was the X-Files. So like I got exposed to that at a pretty young age and got really into it. Like I thought that was just the best show ever, and it scared the crap out of me every time I watched it, but I liked that about it.
Just the theme song is creepy.
Oh,
Creepy
man.
whistling.
Yeah. My wife can't even listen to the theme song. She gets too freaked out. So that's always a fun way to mess with her. But the other thing is that I grew up a big reader and was always reading about things, and anytime, like I think I got a book about UFOs at, like the Scholastic Book Fair or something, and I remember being really into that. And then somebody got me a copy of Project Blue Book, and I read that, and I thought that was just super interesting. And I'm like way too young for it. Like most of it didn't make sense, but the stuff that did was really cool. But then like I read so much, and I had like every book about aliens, every book about UFOs, to the point where people were giving me copies of Kelly Blue Book, and I was like, this is not the same thing. This is not about aliens.
Oh, you must be into cars.
Yeah, so I just have always been really into it, and I think the thing that is most interesting to me is that nobody can necessarily tell us that we're wrong, because we don't know which of these things are real, if any of them, and there's a lot of speculation, and so you can kind of, that's a world that's safe to play in, that's free from, I don't have to burden myself with facts, when you tackle supernatural elements.
Yeah.
So It's like, yeah, research is for chumps. Let's just make up stuff.
Well, that's the fun part about this whole thing, is there's a lot to play with. There's a tremendous amount of documented reports, sightings, evidence in certain respects, depending on how you want to view that evidence and
Absolutely.
that kind of thing. So there's a lot to play with, and there's a lot to go on. And for a topic that's a big nothing burger to some people,
right,
there's a lot of stuff about it, and a lot of time and money that's been poured into a tax money that's been poured into this type of nothingness.
Yes,
so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I love all the little rabbit holes you can go down to. You can explore like individual people or individual stories or individual events. I made fun of research a minute ago, but that's half the fun to me. Is I love to look at like lists of cryptids, and not only just for like figuring out like, hey, what can I use in the next issue of my comic book, but also because it's fun. So I love when I look at a list and there's something on there that I've never seen or never heard of, especially if it's something like foreign. And then just like diving in and really researching that topic and seeing like, how can I spin this? How can I use this? How can this be fun?
Absolutely. Yeah, nothing gets the creative juices flowing. Like diving headfirst into the unknown. And the more you seem to explore about it, the more it starts getting the imagination going further. So when you're coming up with stories for Unit 44 at this point, you've kind of taken a different way of telling these stories compared to the way the first four went. Can you tell me about the thought process between what went on in the first four issues and then now what's going on between issues 5 to now up to issue 10?
Yeah, absolutely. So the original 4 issues, for anybody that may have read them, they are, it's your traditional 4-issue miniseries. It's a complete story that involves, you have to read all of the issues to understand kind of what's going on. It's not only an introduction to the characters, but it's also kind of sets up that they work at Area 51. So obviously you have the things that you think about, aliens and weird inventions and that type of thing. And it was like I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to shoot my shot here, I'm going to do like a big, galactic threatening, extinction level event, because that's, what people are into. And then as I kind of wrote it, I was just like, man, what's really interesting to me is the characters more than anything. Like the plot is cool and the plot is fun, but was it like super original? I don't know. It was a different spin on some things, and it's even then it's very comparable to what you see in like a Men in Black film or other alien based comedies that are out there. But I tried to kind of put my own stamp on it. But it made me realize, like, when I read the first 4 issues, like I love them dearly, but it was like a lot of time spent to get to kind of a resolution that everybody knew was coming, because you know the heroes are going to save the day, and so it was like, well, again, there's a lot of cryptids, there's a lot of alien type stuff, and the other thing that I really kind of leaned into is, especially when we started back up with 5, 6, 7, and 8, like I alternated between, okay, let's do a case file where they look for aliens, they look for a cryptid, they look for a creature, but then let's also do the next issue where we're just hanging out at Area 51 and seeing like what day-to-day life would be like for people who worked there. Because again, you know, nobody can tell me that I'm wrong. So let me just have fun and kind of speculate on.
We'll
on
know
what
you're
might be
right too
happening
when
there.
something happens to you.
It's true. If suddenly you know I stop returning your emails, then please come look for me. But you know, I like that too. I'm like, to me, there's nothing more entertaining, and this is true across a lot of the works that I've done since Unit 44. Is like I really like taking kind of serious topics, but then throwing idiots into the mix, because that juxtaposition of looking at their perspective or people who don't take their job seriously is always funny to me for some reason. So that was a big thing that I just wanted to explore, was like, okay, these are people that are supposed to be like the top of the government on the secret food chain, but they're totally incompetent and they can barely function as human beings. There's just something very, very silly about that and very appealing. So I never thought that like we would go past the 4 issues, and then I just remember kind of saying, you know, I have all these other stories I want to tell, but I don't want each one to have to be 4 issues long, because you know, as creators, we always want to pursue kind of that new shiny thing. So the original idea was, okay, well, let's bring it back, and then I was going to have a different person draw every issue. Sounds kind of familiar, right? I think we were both kind of having the same idea at the same time.
Yeah.
And then and so I kind of did that. Like I got Alex, who's the artist now. After Ed Jimenez, like he drew an issue, and then I had Landon Franklin draw an issue, which became issue 7. But then it just turned out that like working with Alex was just the perfect combination. And I thank you for that referral, because you were like, hey, you should link up with this dude. And I already loved his art. So I had totally intended to get his contact info out of you. But man, that was just such a, you know, when you have that collaboration level with somebody where you trust them, they make you better, you push each other, you challenge each other, and you just make each other laugh. Like it was just like, okay, I'm just going to make the book with him because we're having way too much fun.
Yeah, he's a great collaborator. For those who don't know specifically who we're talking about, Alex Jovich. And Alex was the artist on Mr. Crypt, that entire series.
Which is where I first encountered his work.
Same here. And just a great guy, and tremendous talent in terms of being able to take just a simple direction and expand on it in such an expressive, imaginative way, which is so important for an artist, especially in comics. And when I was working with him on King Cryptid number 3 and bringing him back now for number 8, it really just it hit hard how much he's great in Mr. Crypt, but with what he's doing with King Cryptid and Unit 44, it's a whole different level. He's just such a great storyteller, and you just, you know, point him in a direction and he'll just go. And the stuff that he brings back, it's incredible. Awesome work from him. Super fast, easy to work with, great attitude, talented. You couldn't ask for more in a collaborator.
I mean, you know, even beyond that too, it's like in the process of kind of getting to know him and working with him over those first couple of issues, like we also discovered that we just have like a ton of things in common. You know, we're the exact same age. We both have children. We both have like a music background. So it's like we just had all these cool things in common that really kind of solidified what we were doing, and we brought that excitement and that energy to the page, more or less. So you know, and now when I'm writing the scripts for Unit 44, and I've written very far ahead of kind of even issue 10 at this point, and it's all just me just saying like, I just can't wait to see him draw this. Like I just desperately want to see him draw this comic. So I think that's a lot of it too, is I'm trying to please him and get him excited about it as well.
What are you up to in terms of what you've got in the bullpen?
I've got up to 14 written, and those scripts are done and ready to roll. He's literally just waiting on me to give him the green light, and I know he's wrapping up with you at the moment, so I'm hoping I can jump into his next available slot. And then I have plotted out through 20. I mean, I know where everything will go. And then kind of beyond that, it just depends on, how things are going, and if people are still enjoying the series. I don't want to be redundant. I don't want people to get tired of us. So I figure let me not get too overzealous, because I'll come up with an idea and I'll totally fall in love with it, and then it'll break my heart if we don't get to that point. So I was like, let me just kind of take the foot off the gas a little bit. But if all is going well and we decide to continue past that point, then I'll easily think of things. I mean, I have notebooks just full of ideas of things that I like, jokes that I want to build issues around. And usually that's how it starts for me, is like, it always starts with kind of like a comedy bit in my mind, and then I put a wrapper of, a case kind of around that. Because writing humor is not easy in general, because it's subjective and not everybody thinks the same things are funny. But then when you're doing a comic book too, it's like you have to not only move plot, but you have to dedicate time to setting up the joke, and then paying it off in some regard, whether that punchline is in the next panel, or 3 pages away, or even like 3 issues away. So it's just kind of, there's a lot to juggle with that. So, and I like that challenge of it too. That's one of the things that's really always been appealing for me.
That's what I think works so well too with this series in particular, because you've got a lot of issues that
I do have issues.
Well, yes, that can't be helped, unfortunately. But you've got a lot of issues where you're touching upon both. Obviously, it's a comedy type series, but you've got horror elements in there too. And horror and comedy kind of have a same sort of tension and release vibe.
They do.
The beats that they build up, and instead of the punchline, you got a scare.
It's always going up and down.
A lot of misdirection, things like that. So it really works well together. Just before the show, I had a chance to look over again at issue 10, and I really think people are going to love that issue in particular. It's just a great issue, and it really feels like you and Alex you're gelling really well at this point. Not that the other issues you guys seem off or anything like that, or out of sync, but yeah, it really feels like you guys are kind of finishing each other's comic book sentences.
Yeah, I mean, and I was watching another stream. It may have been the one that you were doing with like Rob Geronimo or something, but you had said something very similar to that, and thank you for that. That's very kind of you to say, and I totally agree with you. Is once you work with somebody a while, it's like any relationship. You're not gonna start running 100 miles an hour. You kind of got to build up to that, and I think that we've definitely found that point, which is super exciting, because then I like to think that excitement comes across in the pages. And a lot of these issues, especially 9 and 10, they've been done for a while now, and so we've had, I look back at them now, and typically, as any creative knows, it's like you look at the stuff you did in the past and you go, ooh, I only see what's wrong with it now. But I look at those issues and I'm like genuinely pleased with them still. Like, I really think that we did a great job on them. So, and that's not me being egotistical. I'm just very happy with the end result that we produced.
Oh yeah, it's great when you get to look back at stuff and have the rare moment of being proud of it still.
Absolutely, yeah.
That tells you you're on the right path.
Yeah, I like to think so, because you learn from everything, and the way that I see it is like, if I can look at something I've done in the past and I can see what's wrong with it, then that means that I've learned something since then. So I guess that just means I've stopped learning at this point.
Well, that's the thing. When you hit a plateau, then you start pushing yourself past your comfort zone on that level, and then you start to go somewhere even more interesting.
And I'll tell you what I've done to kind of harness that exact thing is that, comic books are such an interesting medium, and obviously you can get away with things that you can't do you can't do in TV, you can't do in film. So one of the things that I've really started to do is take a step back and say, okay, like, how can I do something with the medium itself that I'm not breaking new ground necessarily, but I'm like, how can I do something that I don't see a lot? And, how can I do something that I definitely don't see in Alterna's other titles? Because, I look at all the series that you publish, and it's like, everybody's kind of got their thing, like, Geronimo's got his big splash pages, his spot colors and stuff, and it's so striking visually, and I just absolutely just love looking at Blood Realm. But I'm like, I don't want to do that because it's being done on like a high caliber level. I can't compete with that. So how can I take that idea and do something that's a little bit different but still entertaining? So There's like an issue that I've written, I think it would be like number 14, that is gonna like, it completely breaks everything that we've done before. So stuff like that gets me really excited because I just want to challenge myself at this point. I mean, I've been writing comics for a really long time. So it's like I don't want to just do the same thing. And then the other thing that I find myself doing is I'm the type of writer who writes in a full script format. So I'm always breaking down what happens in each panel. I do every, here's all the lines of dialogue. And obviously those things kind of morph and change as we work together. But what I've started doing for Alex, and I'd be curious to hear how you work with King Cryptid, but like I've gotten to the point where there are pages sometimes where I just tell him, like, I just do the plot first, essentially, like the Marvel style, because I know that...
That's exactly what I do.
Okay, that's awesome. And you know, it's like... And I like to give him that freedom, and it's always better than what I can imagine. And I always say, like... Because all of my scripts are just a letter to Alex, essentially. So I'm like, hey, I don't really know how to describe this, and I know you'll do it even better. So here's what I'm thinking. And really the only reason that I do typically write in full script format is just because of the jokes, because of the timing, because of the setup and the punchlines, and things kind of have to happen. So I just kind of rigidly structure those out. But all of my scripts come with the caveat of, but draw whatever you want. But that's cool. I didn't realize that you were like, you just did kind of the summary. That's really neat.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily, I give the summary, but then I also do a page-by-page breakdown of the scene, but I'm just telling the story of the scene. So I'm not giving, for the most part. There are some times where I will give, here's an idea of what the dialogue will be like. Mm-hmm. And it is always going to change by the time the final comes up. But it'll be relative, just to get the artist in the mindset of, this is emotionally what I want the characters to be expressing. Okay. Or this is how I want the composition panel to be placed, so that this way the flow of it makes sense. Because like you were talking about with the jokes and things like that, you have certain things you want to build up, and if you don't, choreograph that the right way, it's going to fall flat or make no sense, and your timing's off. So 95, I'd say, % of the script, for the most part, and this goes for all of the King Cryptid artists, it is that scene by scene breakdown in terms of, here's what happens on this page, here's what's happening on that page. So I'm just telling them the story, and then they decide, okay, do we put 5 panels here, 6 panels, maybe this is 2, if it's a splash page that I have in mind that this should be a big reveal splash page, then I let them know. Okay. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much just me telling them a story, and then them visually interpreting that story.
I'm gonna have to go back and read, because I have the first 4 issues, and I have to reread them with that in mind now. I think that'll give me like a new appreciation for the artists on the dream stories.
I don't know if you got I have the scripts as perks on the campaign. I don't know if you got the one for 1 to 4, but the one for 5 to 9 is on there. I think it's like $10 or something. If you wanted to see the whole breakdown of the script and anything, and same thing for you guys in the chat, if you want to check out literally what the artists are getting for a script, you guys can do that and see, wow, like Pete really tortured these guys, or go, oh, this seems like fun, I could do something with this, but I really like that, because I find that, and I used to work kind of more in that rigid, every single thing, camera angles, the panels, this and that, all the dialogue, the narration, and then I found that I change a lot of it, and I'm also holding the artists back.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anything that I can think about in terms of visually how it would be, I would be getting back a lot of the time stuff that was way better from the artists when I let them know, but hey, if you could do it better, do it better. And so I just figured, let's save everybody the time, because they don't need to read all the inane dialogue that's going to get changed anyway. They just need to know the gist of the story. That's cool. And then, and I'll put it in afterwards. But with that said, both of us letter our own books. Right. So it's kind of like, once you do that, you go from like writer to like letterer editor. Right. When you're then putting and
then when you start lettering your own stuff, you're like, why did I write all these words? Like, why did we need all these words? Delete. Yeah. I'm not the guy that puts in more. I'm the guy that takes stuff out.
Exactly. Same here. Yeah. Especially when you're dealing with such very talented artists that can go in there, and you're like, I don't want to be redundant with this. And then the more lettering you put on there, the more it blocks up the beautiful art.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. I always feel like the best compliment I can give an artist is to not have any words like in a panel or something, because they've sold it perfectly with just the emotion of the character or the scene or just the artwork. It says everything it needs to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to me, in terms of writing, and then especially visually, then with the lettering, since that's the visual representation of the writing, it's all in service to the art. It has to frame the art, and it has to make sure it's lifting and supporting and elevating the art, making sure that every single thing about it, it's the art. That's the hero here. And you know, as soon as the writing starts becoming the dominating factor,
Right.
that's when you gotta go back in there and rework that.
Yeah, because people aren't buying the comic to read a novel. There's plenty of novels already out there. So
And it's such a disservice to the power of the medium.
right.
You know, why go and do that with that? You know, yeah, like you said, just go make a novel.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned briefly, and I didn't want to cut you off at the time. You were talking about how you've been making comics for a long time. Exactly how long is that?
So I think I started publishing stuff in either 2011 or 2012. So a little over 10 years now. I think I just started doing like anthology type stuff, and then once I kind of cut my teeth and actually like felt like because you don't want your first couple of comics to ever be published. You need to like get in there and mess stuff up, but you need to see the finished product so that you kind of like understand what you did wrong. So it was just I think I spent like a year just writing scripts before I even talked to any artists. I was like, let me just try to like master the skeleton part of it, because I have a writing background anyway, and I have a degree in writing, so I was like, I understand how story works, as we all do as we consume media, and so, but I was like, I really love this medium, and I really want to see if I can do something with this. And so it was like, yeah, let me just practice for a while. And then I felt comfortable enough that I started to look at like calls for submissions for anthologies, and just started teaming up with people. And then from there I did like some one shots, and then it was just all like, okay, let's dive into the mini series stuff. And I've been thankful just to have some really amazing collaborators along the way, like one of whom that I worked with like super early in my career was Christian Rossi, who's become just like a rock star.
Oh yeah, Christian's great.
And he's an amazing human, and so he drew like there's a mini series that I wrote that he drew, and there's a one shot that I wrote that he drew, and we did some shorts together. So it's like being
What
able
is
to
that?
see
I didn't
these
know that
people.
you worked with Christian.
Yeah, so we had did a short comic that was in like a public domain anthology using public domain characters, and we did like a Robin Hood story that was kind of set in modern day. And then I did a one shot called The Temporal, which is a time travel comic. I actually have copies in my web store if anybody wants to check it out. And
Nice.
then we did a crime fiction mini series. I know people look at me and they think Unit 44 and they go, oh yeah, that guy, crime fiction for sure. But that's where I started. Like I used to be really into those types of comics, and was a big fan of like Criminal by Brubaker and stuff. So that influenced a lot of my early stuff. So we did a 4-issue series with Arcana called Chambers, and it's the story of a government agent, I can't even remember what she is now because it was so long ago, but people are taking out her family members, and she has to kind of figure out who's out to get her before it's too late. So it's a very like high adrenaline, time is running out, very claustrophobic crime tale.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yep. So I spent
Small
like
world.
2 years just working with him like on project after project, and I think about, because I look at the art that he's doing now, and he was great then, but he's amazing now, and I'm like, how much of that was because I gave him all those pages to draw? Like, what type of credit can I take for his amazing art at this stage?
Yeah. Speaking of which, Rob Geronimo is he just launched a pre-launch page for his upcoming campaign for Blood Realm 15 to 18, and he's got Christian on there doing, I believe, an issue.
Yeah.
And he's got his art on there too. And like every time I think Christian can't get better,
I know it.
he just surpasses what I even thought that, I thought I've seen a lot of his work. But every time, it's incredible what he's doing on that Blood Realm issue. Incredible.
I can't wait to have that thing in my hands. I'm excited because I think I've read just about everything that he's put out over the years since we worked together, because I like to support him And yeah, he just does. He gets consistently better, and people may not know that he's kind of like a protege of Eduardo Riso.
Yep.
And so he really kind of got to cut his teeth, like doing inks for him and doing some backup stuff. So, and he's a master. Eduardo Riso is phenomenal, and you can see that influence that it's had on Christian. But I feel like he's definitely put his own stamp on it too. But you want dark and moody, like he's your guy.
Oh yeah. That's why I had to get him for the first issue of King Cryptid. It set the tone.
Totally.
It's just great. I mean, speaking of with that, this is going to be like the Christian Rossi power hour here, but
the appreciation hour. Let's call
yeah. The cover for #1 of King Cryptid, I said, okay, I just want to showcase, the artists that we have on the 4 issues. Send me like a quick thing of so people can understand what you're gonna do for King Cryptid. What
and you
he'll
got a
look like.
masterpiece.
And I literally get the cover to #1, essentially. I'm like, this is a cover, Christian.
Yeah.
This thing's iconic. And I'm like,
awesome.
Can we use this as the cover? I was like, I'll pay you for the cover. You already just drew it.
Yeah.
But he's like, yeah, okay, and
Nice.
it was incredible. Absolutely incredible. Just fantastic. And I can't wait to work with him again. He's doing the coloring on issue 9. And then also he's going to be, I don't know if he knows it yet. I do have to confirm with him. I kind of hinted it at him a while ago, but his schedule is very full. But he's I'm gonna dang nabbit, I'm gonna force him to draw an issue next year because he has to draw this. And if he can't do that, it'll break my heart, and we'll have to push it back a year. But it'll be okay.
Did you draw something like specifically with him in mind?
Well, yeah, I've got an issue that I want. I'm bringing the behemoth back.
Okay.
And I want him to. It's a very crucial issue, and I want him where he drew him so great in issue 1. I want him to really tackle it this time around when he comes back again.
Awesome.
So yeah, hopefully I can finagle some time away from him on that front.
I hope so
But
too.
yeah, that'll be next year.
You may have to like go down to, because I think he's in like Argentina. You may have to fly down there and kidnap him, and then during your comic book radio shows, you can be you're like, hey, keep working, and we'll all know what's going on.
Just crack the whip.
Yeah.
We're like, why Pete keep cracking the whip over to the left there? And where's Christian been? He hasn't been on social media for 6 months.
Oh, I love his social media though. I love seeing what he's working on.
Oh yeah, he's incredible. Just and like you said, such a great dude. So in terms of now what you've got planned for Unit 44, can you give a gist of issues 5 to 10, but then also maybe tease at what's to come with maybe 11 and 12?
Yeah, so 5 to 10, again, we're really starting to see what day-to-day life is like for these guys. We've seen them stop an alien invasion in the first 4 issues, but what happened? What's the boring stuff that kind of happens in between that? And boring is a relative term, but they get into trouble. They complicate everything for themselves. They walk into a situation that should be easy, and because of their pure idiocy, it makes everything worse. So, like for instance, in issue 5, when we came back, I sent them to investigate a cult. And because these guys are total idiots, they go in there saying, okay, we're going to shut this cult down, and they end up getting sucked right into the cult. That's just the type of situations that we run into. So coming up, I look at issues 9 and 10 as kind of like the first 2 issues of a new kind of season, more or less, where 9, 10, 11, and 12 all kind of have like a common theme and a common thread that runs through them. So as far as other things that they'll be investigating, like in the future, obviously in 9, the agents have died and they've gone to hell, and they now have to kind of fight their way back out again, if they want to live. And then in 10, we send them after a werewolf. But these are things that like are, I don't look at number 10, for instance, and I don't say like this is a werewolf story. Like it's not. It's really a story about like everything you think is wrong. It's also a story about like how our agents actually work better when they're together than when they're apart, even though they don't always get along. So I try to put in these deeper themes along with jokes and along with plot, But I don't want people to think like, oh, these are just guys that this is just going to be a big action sequence. No, we're going to grow and we're going to learn a little bit more about them each time. And then kind of as we progress, I think my main mission is I want to look more into them as people and start to introduce, what has happened before we met them, what is home life like for them, but while all still retaining the sense of adventure and the humor as well. So, I want to actually dive into Gibson and Hatch as human beings.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see if you pull the whole double life aspect. Like their neighbors have no idea what they do for a living. And
oh man, I've had so many ideas, and it's like it's trying to find out, because I have this like page length that I work into, and I don't want to like run a story into the ground. Like I don't want you to be watching these people like go home and eat dinner and watch TV. It's like, what are the most interesting elements that we can kind of pull out and mine and explore? So thinking a lot about that over the past year has been huge. But I think I found really good stuff to work with.
The whole series, and I mean, I don't know if you sense the vibe is on this way, or maybe you constructed it to be this way, or you were influenced by it, but it seriously reminds me of a great Adult Swim show. Like it would go right before or after Venture Brothers.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that's probably like the number one piece of feedback that I've gotten is people always say like, oh, this should be like an Adult Swim cartoon. And probably like I watched a lot of that stuff in my 20s, and I think it sunk in on some level. Like I don't really watch it now, but I do appreciate like a good dry sarcastic comedy.
I haven't caught it in years, but from my fond memories of when I enjoyed it.
Right, and it's like it probably wasn't that great, but I like stuff that some people are going to think is hilarious, and some people are going to say like that's the dumbest show I've ever seen in my life. Like that, I like the extreme of that, I think.
Some of the things I love the most, I'm like, man, that's horrible. I love it.
Yeah. Well, and then the other thing too is that like I also have the added challenge of, because I don't really like I don't like lowbrow humor. Not that I'm like writing literature on any level, but I don't like to do stuff that could be considered like offensive. I don't want to limit the audience. I don't like, I'm not trying to make any type of statements with the work. I just want to like play with these characters and play in the world and make sure that we tell a great story in the process.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing that. I think it's getting better and better too with each issue. So in terms of what you have coming up for 11 and 12, now you got 9 and 10 currently on the alternate campaign here, but 11 and 12, did you give a little bit of a hint of that when you were talking about, or anything specific?
Nothing specific, but I can give the gist, because I think that they're fun gists and they wouldn't give anything away. But 11 will have to do with aliens, a different type of alien that we haven't seen before, new alien.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be kind of like a sort of a day in the life at Area 51 type of issue, but we're dealing with an alien. And then 12 would be sending them out in the field where they encounter a poltergeist that they have to deal with.
Oh, all right. Nice.
2 hilarious issues, if I do say so myself. Like one of the things that I find is that when I'm writing the series, and I'm curious, this would be a good question for you as well, if you experience the same thing, but I find like if I have to really work at an issue, it never really comes together. It's like the ones that are easy and are super quick to write, like I can have the idea and then I can literally write the script like in the next day or two, and I find that those come together so well, and those are like the best issues that we do. Like, do you do that same thing, like where you like, oh, I got this, like it's all hitting, it's the lightning is striking and you're getting it all down?
Oh yeah, I think it's the same kind of process when you're working on art. I don't know if you draw at all in any capacity, but
Nothing
for
I would
writing,
share with anyone.
for writing, it's the same thing of when you're torturing a piece and you're wrestling with it, and you're trying to make this awkward, whatever thing work out.
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that you stick with it, you commit. You regret that for forever. Like, especially once it gets published and put out there, and you're like, man, why Why don't I just drop that and go for what was naturally telling that scene the right way, or whatever it would have been, or that story,
Yeah.
and go with that, and it would have flowed a lot easier, and it would have been also a more enjoyable experience for the audience.
Absolutely.
But
I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
You said it. It's like if I'm struggling with a story, I'm like, nope, we're just not doing it right now. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe it'll gel in the future, but no, it can't happen. It's too much.
Yeah. Once you start forcing, like, you shouldn't get to a point where you feel you have to constantly force the characters into situations and reactions and motivations. Exactly. It should just, like, the characters are like this. This is what the situation is. And that should really be all you need. Everything else starts playing off of it, and then you understand, you speak through, or the characters speak through you. And all of a sudden now the story is taking place. And then it's up to you afterwards to maybe edit and see, what's the strongest way to tell that story.
Right.
Especially if you've got like a confined page limit or anything like that. And you can only put so many panels on a page. And, so you have all these restrictions. But yeah, people that are like every single aspect of it, that kind of, well, how do I get that to work out? How do I get that to happen? And how do I make this character do that? And they're really, really struggling with it. And you have to get to a point with not just the story, but I think the characters as well, where
right, that's a sign that they
write themselves.
Yeah, you don't know what you're doing yet. You're not ready to write it because you haven't thought about it. You haven't done enough research. You don't know. You haven't fleshed out your characters enough. That's a surefire sign. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I've seen a lot of those instances over the years as a publisher.
Oh, totally.
And seeing people's work, and as a fan and a reader as well. And I'm like, man, like, it really felt like they're just wrestling with this the whole time, or certain characters where depending if it's a pre-existing character that's been around for a while, and maybe more about it feels like, than the writer. Yeah. And you're like, why are they writing it like that? That's strange. Don't they know this character is like this, or can do that, or, and if they can't do that and they're being restricted in this issue, you got to explain why and what's happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, it'll feel like they just really, they don't really know what they're doing in this scenario. And unfortunately the story suffers for it.
Yeah. Well, we're always in the pursuit of the next story, and how can we be better the next time. So, don't let that, for anybody who might be listening, don't let that make you lose hope either. Just, put in the time. If this was easy, everybody would do it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing, is that to get it to feel easy, and like it's just, oh yeah, this is a breeze. These characters write themselves, the stories write themselves. To do that and to get to that, you got to spend a lot of time and effort and go through the weeds and, and all that. And then you're going to find, oh, okay, this isn't, you hit a state where you're like, almost like you're Neo in the Matrix,
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, I see it now. It's all, and it becomes easier. Now, it's not always easy, but it becomes easier.
Totally. And, I'm dealing with that right now, like even in kind of my planning stages, even though I don't, day to day, I don't necessarily always have time to write Unit 44 or think about Unit 44. It's like, I'm that type of person that, like, I let my subconscious marinate on stuff in the background, and then, like, the solution will hit me. So I was actually struggling really hard with a story that I know is coming up, that, like, the issue that I really wanted to tell, and I knew the plot, but, like, I just couldn't figure out, like, what to do to make it happen so it felt natural. And so I was like, okay, let me just stop thinking about it. And then, of course, like 2 days later, it just hit me, like when I was on the toilet or something. I was like, oh, there we go, there it is.
I mean, not on the toilet for me,
but in the shower.
Great
thinking on the toilet.
Most people do. But as far as stories go, for me, in the shower, stories will come to me as I'm just kind of, and I think it's because, like, my brain is finally shutting off at that point. It's usually like 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm just tired. So I'm not thinking actively about anything. And so it all of a sudden, the problem of a story or whatever it may be, or an idea, all of a sudden pops in. And I got to, go to the phone or whatever else to write it down. And I eventually got so many ideas. I got like maybe 60 or 70 story ideas now for King Cryptid. I have to stop myself now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just kind of go, okay, let's flesh those out because, I mean, I'm sure you experienced the same thing, and if not, let me know because I'm very interested as far as what you're going to say with this. But for me, when I come up with an idea for a story, it's like the Hydra. You cut off one head, and two more grow in its place, and it
Right.
feels like okay, you set up this story, and when
Hmm.
you really start thinking about it and plotting it out, you're like, this might answer some questions,
Uh-huh.
but two more now have sprung up in its place,
Right.
and you could do more issues based off of what you just set up and what you answered.
Yep. Yeah, it's just a matter of and again, it's neat because you have the flexibility in your format as I do in mine, where it's like we can either do something that's completely unrelated, something in the past, or we can kind of connect it back, or it can be a direct continuation and just a different story as well. So yeah, I struggle with that a lot because there's a lot of ideas where you're just like, that's a great idea, but I have no clue where to fit it in right now. So I'm just gonna put it down in the notebook, and then next time I'm like, what do I write about? Then crack it open and hope that something you wrote down something worthwhile at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I hear you 100%. And that hopefully you can decipher what the hell you wrote down
That's the
if
other
you
problem.
if
Yeah.
you didn't do it intelligibly. But that's what I love as not just a creator, but especially as a reader. What I love about the serialized, ongoing, episodic format was the fact that it was every story contained obviously a couple surprises or whatever, but every single thing about the series is a surprise,
Hmm.
because it's not just this one big story being decompressed beyond
Right.
belief. It's every single thing's a new adventure, a new
Hmm.
situation. If this one was okay, maybe the next one's fantastic,
Yeah.
and it can kind of bounce around and really take you by surprise. And I love that element of surprise within telling stories that way, as opposed to like if
Absolutely.
you took like you were talking about the first four issues, where
Hmm.
you're like, I don't want to tell like issue 5 over 4 issues.
Yeah.
I want to do 5, then 6, and they're all different stories. It keeps it exciting for you. It keeps it exciting for the reader.
Yeah, and to be completely honest with you, you brought up a really good point right there. Is that when I was thinking about bringing the series back, my first instinct was, well, okay, well, what are issues 5 through 9 gonna be? And I actually had like a sequel story that I basically wrote out most of it, and then I just was like, this doesn't excite me at all. Like, it's perfectly passable, but it doesn't feel inspired. It doesn't feel like the next thing. It feels like what's expected. So I actually like threw it all away. And there's been jokes that I wrote for that I have mined and placed in other issues where it made sense. But yeah, it just like, I could have painted by numbers if I had wanted to, and I just didn't want to.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, if anything, that's why I really want to get away, and I've been slowly doing that at Alterna
Hmm.
with everybody's publishing line.
Yeah.
Even Rob, I'm getting him in more of a mindset too to focus on, even if you've got a story arc,
Yeah.
make sure that issue, that there's a complete story within that issue, and then it builds upon whatever is in that arc. And
I
so
can't
he's
remember
been doing that too.
in King Cryptid, do you mark the time that like the dates that things are happening,
In
or
in flashbacks, I do.
okay,
But in the present tense of the story,
right,
it's like this perpetual modern-ish feel to it.
okay,
So it's not like a I if I had to pinpoint it, I would say that someone can say it's between the years of like 2010 to 2015. If someone wants to say like technologically what it's like.
hmm,
But then there's also things, because there's a tremendous amount of technology within King Cryptid that's going to be unbelievably advanced. So to put it in like, oh, it's always whatever year it's coming out in, I think
right,
would be a disservice to it. I'm really trying my best in terms of all the stuff that I've loved over the years that I thought was just perennial, evergreen storytelling. Like you could watch Batman the animated series 50 years from now and
yes,
still be like, yeah, I enjoy this. And I don't need to know that it's like today, 10
right,
years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. It's got that Art
hmm,
Deco kind of vibe thing. It's
yeah,
got like
it's
the
kind of
old timey,
timeless.
yeah. There's black and white TVs, but then it's like
Hmm.
modern at the same time. So
Yep.
they have like that whole kind of feel. And King Cryptid doesn't go that far with it. But when I have certain flashbacks, I date those. So I'll even put like the month and the day along with the year, because those are very specific time markers. But then everything else after that point is like, 30 years later. If we do that, it'd be okay. This is now taking place 30 years from when that flashback was. Okay. So it'll be stuff like that.
So I've often thought about, like, I don't demarcate the times for any of the Unit 44 issues. Like, we kind of set them up with a case number, and the case numbers are not like sequential at all. They're not connected to each other. So, I've often thought about, like, well, when does this take place? Like, does this actually take place like after that first 4-issue miniseries? Does it take place beforehand? Do some of them take place like so? It's like, as people read it, I don't want them to necessarily think like all of these take place sequentially. They could have been years ago. They could be brand new. Could have happened yesterday. But, I think about that. I'm like, is that something that I need to lean more into? Is it okay with me just kind of playing at my whim? And when do other people think these things are taking place? So that's just something that's crossed my mind a lot. So I how you had done it.
I think once you get to a certain amount of issues, it becomes important to state a frame of reference for events. Yeah. But in terms of what you're doing right now, I think if you had an issue where you specifically mention issue 5, something that happened then, and let's say it's issue 12 now, and they talk about something that, well, the last week, blah, 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 at that cult, that kind of a thing. Then you could do like, we'll see issue 5 for that. And people can maybe build up a frame of reference for what's what. If anything, I would go into it with your case files thinking that, honestly, they're not just, going in linear order.
Yeah.
I'd be thinking that with something like that, they'd be just kind of like, here's the number of what this is because we're just assigning it at that, and that kind of keeps another level of secrecy in the mix, and plausible deniability of the sequence of events.
Exactly. I mean, nothing else makes sense at this point. Why should the numbers?
Exactly. And that's I think it's to me, I don't think it really matters so much. And I don't know how the readers might feel about it. I haven't had anybody complain about that or wonder when, is this playing out linearly? What are the sequence of events here? I think everyone is kind of thinking that unless it specifies that it takes place 2 or 3 years or whatever it is when you started off, I think everyone's just going, well, this is just this is a sequence of events in terms of what's being told. Yeah. But yeah, with my own story, because of the fact that we will hop around here and there, I make sure to let people know when we are in a different time period or something like that, or sometimes even obviously a different place.
Yeah, that's smart.
But yeah, we got a couple questions here.
Oh, questions
in the chat.
I forgot that anybody was here except for you and me. I'll be honest. I got lost in your eyes.
Oh, Wes. It must be the reflection.
Oh, yeah. Those are my eyes. What am I thinking?
Black, empty, like a doll's eyes. Adam Warlock says, after King Cryptid Blood Realm crossover, how about a King Cryptid Unit 44 crossover?
What is KC? King Cryptid? What's that?
KC. Kier Covington.
There we go, yeah. I mean, I would, if I had my way, I would cross over with every book constantly. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, technically, I maintain that I had the first alternate crossover. I mean, I will die on that hill, since we featured some characters along the way.
You sort of did. If I got to really dig deep into the archives, I would say it was the 2009 Free Comic Book Day book that we did. That was Attack of the Alterna Zombies.
What would you know about this, Peter? Like,
I'd have to check with the boss.
All right. How about we had the first crossover in this generation of
in this wave of the newsprint era.
There we go. The newsprint era. I like that.
Yeah.
It's got a good ring.
Yeah. I would say that you did. You definitely flirted with that whole here's all the characters, and that's issue 6 if you guys want to check it out. That's a fun issue. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense. King Cryptid Unit 44 crossover, absolutely.
Yeah. And we could have King Cryptid just make a bunch of fart jokes. That seems like really in his character.
That seems completely in character.
Yeah.
Yeah, good writing.
Yeah.
we share an artist with Alex Jovich, so
Sure.
he's good at drawing both.
Oh, I never thought
You
about
know,
that. Yeah.
so it makes sense. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We'll
That's a good
see.
idea.
Well, if you guys support King Cryptid Unit 44 and also that Blood Realm King Cryptid crossover this summer,
I
you
was gonna
know,
say if
then let us
that
know.
KC Blood Realm, if that does gangbusters, then that will send me a message.
Send all of us a message because we
Yeah.
could really start building up kind of an alternaverse at that point.
I think that we, as all the creators, I think we would love that. I think we just want to know that other people want that as well. So
Exactly.
vote with your wallet, I guess,
Yeah.
and your enthusiasm.
Because that's the thing too, is you did set like a precedent in issue 6 in
did.
terms of what can happen,
Yeah.
and that
Anything's possible.
they can kind of create a portal to get into
Mm-hmm.
various worlds if need be.
We have a device now that can get anybody anywhere for any title. So come and borrow it all you want.
Exactly. But again, like you said, and like I said just a second or two before that, you guys gotta support when those crossovers come out. So,
Yeah.
and also the titles that are the main titles as well. So, if you guys are really wanting to see more of that, let us know. But when we do the King Cryptid Blood Realm crossover, really make sure you get out there, you support that book, and just keep supporting and reading the books that you guys are reading at Alterna, and keep talking about them, and let us know.
How many people do we have with us in the chat at the moment?
2021, it keeps kind of fluctuating.
Okay. Well, I'll put a question out there, and if people want to answer it, that would be cool. I'm soliciting feedback. This is now my test audience. But if you are a Unit 44 reader, well, first of all, if you're not a Unit 44 reader, then why? But secondly, if you are, I would be curious to know, like, if you had a favorite issue or if you had a favorite moment from one of the comics. I would welcome that feedback. So maybe you think about that as Peter and I continue to gaze at each other here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let us know. Let us know what you enjoy. That's something that it happens a lot in this chat and on the alternate chats too, but on the social medias as a whole.
For sure.
Unfortunately, sometimes we don't see a lot of that. We see more about what we don't like. Let's put out there what we do like, and then we can build off of that. So if you do have a favorite issue, if you got a favorite character, if you want to see more of a character or anything like that, let us know.
If your feedback is like, I don't like one of the main characters, then I have some really terrible news for you.
We can always kill them off. It's comic books.
That's true.
But that's the thing that's fun about once we can venture, I think, solidly into crossover territory, or at least guest star territory, which would be nice, it adds an extra element of surprise to, well, what can happen in this issue? What's going to be this next one? Because now you've broken that barrier. And so there's even more that you could play with. And especially, we're never going to have a crossover or a guest star kind of thing that feels like it didn't have any impact, they don't remember it, etc. And I know Unit 44, they can do a couple things with memory and here and there, but we're going to leave things the way that they are. I think that makes it more interesting.
Yeah, I don't want to, even though we like exist in a sci-fi universe, like I never want to erase minds or retcon anything. It's like anything is fair game, and whatever happens has happened.
Exactly. 100%. All right, we got another question here from Mercury Wells. Says, what's the best place to find an artist if you're wanting to write comics?
Oh, there's an 800 number that you can call, and they will link you up with a perfect artist for you.
You know about that?
Yeah,
800
you
artists?
know about that? I thought I wasn't allowed to tell anybody about it, but I mean, where do people go nowadays? Back in, like, I started off on, like, using digital webbing forums. Like, that was my go-to place for a long time, and then it was Twitter. Like, Twitter was just linking me up with people somehow. I don't know.
Yeah.
Where would you go if you needed to?
I did the same thing with digital webbing with the talent search that they had, and then there was Pencil Jack and DeviantArt, and then then it kind of, remember Comic Space? Remember that?
I don't. I may have missed out on that.
That was actually a fun site. It was literally just for people who were into comics. I don't know, they didn't vet anybody, but if you were into comics, you pretty much signed up, and a lot of comic creators on there, and it was a really fun site. It was kind of like MySpacey, Facebooky kind of a
Oh
thing.
wow. Huh.
But yeah, I found a lot of different people that I know still now, through comic space, and I don't understand. I
That's
don't
crazy.
understand why. Yeah, I don't understand why or where that site went or whatever. But it was great. But yeah, for right now, I mean, I would have to say whatever your social media of choice is, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Not only put the call out there, but also do some discovery work of your own to
I
see
think,
who else
yeah, I
is
think
making
if I
what.
were starting over, I think the approach that I might take, and I've never done this, so I can't verify that it would work, but there are so many web comics out there. There are people that are putting web comics up on their Instagrams or their Twitters, or they have like a webtoon or a one of whatever those millions of sites are. But I would look for somebody whose work speaks to you and genuinely feels like a good fit, and approach them with your potential project, but be realistic about it, and let them know like what you're offering in return. Like, let them read it to see if it's something, because comics are a commitment for an artist. Like, an artist is going to work on a comic for a really long time. Like, you may have banged out the script in an afternoon, but that artist is going to spend like 10 hours like minimum per page. And so people want to, when artists say like no thank you, it's nothing against you. Most of the time it's like you've got to think about where you want to put your time too. Would you want to write somebody's comic book if you weren't really into the story, even if somebody was paying you? So it's like, be open to finding, don't rush it. Look for somebody that's going to be a good fit for you. But yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to message somebody whose art you like and just say, hey, I'm really into what you're doing, and here's my idea, and here's what I'm paying, and here's how long the commit would be. And if you've never made a comic before, then please don't try to jump into like a 60 issue miniseries. Like, do a 5-page comic, start there, and then work your way up. Like, don't overcommit yourself either, because the worst thing that can happen is you'll put out your 4-issue miniseries, and then you'll never be able to look at it again because you can't stand it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned it before too about starting small, which is really
Hmm.
good advice. A lot of people are jumping into things. I mean, I've had submissions come over the years where people are like, "I've got a 30-issue series planned. This is my first ever thing in comics," and I'm like,
Oh, yeah. Do a 3-page comic when you start. You will learn
"Yeah,
so much. You will learn so
seriously."
much from that 3-page comic that you can apply to then a 5-page comic, and then a 10-pager, and work your way up, because they're expensive. They take forever. Like, when I don't know if you have this kind of same thing, and maybe it's different for you, but like when I write a comic, even if I have an artist like lined up for it, not Alex because he's super fast, but normally I would always say, like, on the day I send it to an artist, I would be like, well, this is going to be at least a year until this is done. Like, I need to go figure out what I'm doing in the meantime. Like, it's a lengthy process.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing is when you're starting off too, you're barely competent. You're probably not competent about any of this at all.
Yeah.
And so whatever you're talking about, you're not talking about it from a place of confidence. So you're just kind of lying to yourself and everybody else
Right.
around you.
Right.
The fake it till you make it really blows
Mm-hmm.
up in your face when you're not
Yeah.
competent. So you really want to make sure that you're building that competency and you're learning as much as you can. You're not rushing into the whole, let me get this published, let me get this published. Because like what you had mentioned before, a lot of the stuff when you work it out on your own in the very beginning, it's you kind of don't want anyone to see that.
Yeah.
You don't want that. Like, that's going to be the worst thing that could actually happen to you is your
It
very
is.
first stuff gets published, gets a
Yeah.
platform,
Mm-hmm.
because
Because
that's your first impression,
yeah,
and people are going to go, "Whoa."
and the last thing that you want is like your work is like being circled around on social media as like an example of the worst comic ever written. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't want to jump out there until you're ready and you have it. And I know you're excited, and that's cool. Like, be excited, but temper your expectations.
Yeah, totally. Make it, circle it among other trusted people,
Yeah.
show them what you're doing, get some feedback. Always be in the
Mm-hmm.
mindset to get feedback about it. and maybe even make some ash cans. That's just, printing them up at home and give them away for free or whatever it is. And, and learn. Always be in that mindset to learn. You're eventually going to know, because some people go, well, when am I going to know when I'm ready? You're going to know when you're ready because you're going to start getting more and more people that want to know where they can buy that.
Yeah, or people that want to work with you or
exactly.
collaborate with you, yeah.
And that always happens. You might think like, oh, that's never going to happen. No one's going to say that to me. No one's going to do that. It will happen. You have to stick with it, though, and you have to keep working on your craft and what you're doing in terms of your storytelling and anything else you want to accomplish. Rushing into it and forcing it upon people is going to put everyone in an awkward space, and there's going to be a lot of resentment between you and your audience.
Yeah.
It's just take that time to fall in love with all of this before you start trying to say, yeah, I'm going to start getting it out there, selling it, publishing it, this and that and whatever. Don't be afraid of that.
Yeah. And I'm going to hope that like your motivation for getting into comics is not money. Like, I'm really going to hope for you that that's not what you want.
Especially at first, and I know it sounds weird to say that because people go, well, like it should be. But the thing is, if your motivation for honestly anything is at first to make money, there's a million other things you could do with your life if all it is the goal for you is money.
Way easier things and less heartbreaking things and way less expensive things.
Exactly. So, you really got to understand, where are you coming from with this? What are you trying to do? Is this what you think is your purpose? Do you have something to say in terms of your storytelling? Are you trying to express something in terms of something that'll maybe benefit or enrich the lives of other people and entertain them, hopefully, too, in the process? You really have to be honest with yourself on that level. Because if it is like money, I want to make money and I want to make comics. Okay, well, money will come. That's a side effect of doing the thing.
Doing great work.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. But if that's just the goal should be to make great stories, great characters, the best you can possibly do, and to learn as much as you can to getting to that point and to continue it. That's the goal, essentially. Money is not the goal. If money's the goal, you've kind of already lost, because everything else is not going to be in service to what's going to make you money.
Exactly. And the thing that I always tell creators when they ask me about these things is, I always say, like, your priority number one is to not only tell a good story, but then you have to make the barrier to entry extremely low for that story. Like, when you're starting off, you need to not be scared to give your stuff away for free, because what's better, like, weigh out the options here. Do you want somebody to pay for your book and then never read it, or do you want them to get it for free and read it and love it and tell their friends about it and want to read the next thing and follow you and become your long-term fan? Like, so think about that too.
Yeah, exactly. It's a difference between, are you playing the short term or the long term?
Right.
And it's very important. Eric the Guapo says, to be completely honest, 100%, I would get a crossover book as a side purchase to the actual story. I usually do not buy crossovers because they tend to not lead anywhere, but that's just me. He goes, many people love World's Finest. And that's the thing, too, is that, Eric, what you're saying, that's a big reason why we're stressing that these will lead somewhere. They are important, because I feel the same way, man. When I see that happen with certain crossovers, especially from the bigger companies that want to not shake up the status quo, they want to give the illusion of shaking up the status quo, I ignore it. I don't go for it. But with the Blood Realm King Cryptid crossover, that's gonna have ramifications for both titles for a very long time. It's also gonna set up a lot of different things where I think readers maybe will look into both titles deeper to see, wait, was this kind of being planned out the whole time? Like, that's the effect that this is going to have. Even though this wasn't being planned out years ago, it's going to feel like, wait a second, there's stuff that's happening here that feels like what was happening 5 issues ago within, like, Blood Realm, let's say, that this was being planned. But that's how deep this is going to be with both titles. And then for awesome. King Cryptid especially, for King Cryptid, it's going to rock his whole world. What happens in that Blood Realm crossover it takes place right after King Cryptid number 9, so before 9 and 10, and then for Blood Realm it takes place after 18, so between 18 and 19. And there's things that happen within that crossover that will really help to identify and set up something major that happens in issue 10 of King Cryptid. So that's important, and there's stuff that plays out. Now, does that mean that you have to go into it and you'll be lost if you don't get that? No, but it's going to add to the experience. You're not going to feel cheapened. It's not like a cash grab type thing. It's not like, oh, we're just doing this for funsies, and then the same thing will occur if there's a crossover or a guest appearance or whatever that comes out of it within the other titles. But we'll see how that plays out, because not all of this, that's the thing that's important to stress too, is not all of the crossover type things will be an event like the way the King Cryptid Blood Realm thing will be. So if there's like the Unit 44 agents maybe making a guest star appearance in King Cryptid, or King Cryptid making a guest appearance in Unit 44, that would be within an issue, within the continuity of the series. But it all really hinges upon how receptive you guys are to this King Cryptid Blood Realm crossover. Now, it's set up in a way too, and not to make this interview tangential with this, but it's set up in a way too where if you guys don't enjoy the crossover, it doesn't go well, you read it, you didn't like it, it's okay, and we can still have things exist within their own universes and just make it a one-off thing that happened, and both worlds will always be impacted by it, but we don't need to revisit that again. So I just want to make sure that that's clear too. But I think it'd be a lot of fun to do a crossover with Unit 44. I think Unit 44 is ripe for that kind of thing, of almost being like the nexus of guest appearances.
Yeah.
Whenever you want to call in. Yeah. So, and
for sure.
Alex, is it safe to say that he's going to be the series regular artist?
I hope so. As long as he doesn't die, then yeah. I would like to work with him for as long as I can.
Well,
I really want to do... Okay, there's one other thing I want to do. And I would love for there to be an issue... and I kind of have started thinking about it, but trying not to let myself get too excited about it. But I would like to do an issue that uses like all three of the artists that we've had and find a way to combine them into like a jam issue that makes sense. And I think I know how to do it, but I haven't like just sat down and given myself the space. But I think that would be cool, because I really am. I really like all of the guys that I've had the opportunity to work with, Ed and Landon and Alex, and I would think that it would be neat to kind of have them all. Like maybe that's like how it all ends or something. I don't know, but that would be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah. I think you could do that. So if Alex needs a break, or his schedule doesn't afford him the opportunity to work on an issue, you'll kind of call upon the services of somebody else?
I mean, maybe it depends, because like I said, like I write so many of them with him in mind now that it would almost feel like wrong to have somebody step in if it was like written with him in mind. So maybe maybe I would write something for another person specifically, but I don't know. Let's not put those bad vibes out in the air. Like, what are you trying to tell me? Like,
I'm not trying to tell you anything.
Keep him so busy on King Cryptid that we're gonna have to fight for Alex. We're gonna have like a televised boxing match.
What I'm really gonna have to do is I'm gonna have to try to talk to Troy. I want to see if Troy Vivacis, who has the rights to Mr. Crypt. Mm-hmm. Now we're on good terms, okay, but he doesn't want to tell any more Mr. Crypt stories. He's done.
Right.
I want to see if I can finagle a licensing kind of thing here to see if he'd either want to give me and grant me the ability to, and then he just kind of makes some money off of it, or if he wants to come in there and write it, if he wants to be a consult on something, in terms of that. But I would love to bring those characters back in some capacity, whether in Unit 44 or maybe King Cryptid, because that would be kind of fun to have a Mr. Crypt meets King Cryptid kind of thing.
Totally.
But yeah, I think there would be a lot of fun within that aspect of it. But again, it really depends on what the readers want. I think we could do a tremendous amount of just really fun stories if we can be able to play with some of these other characters once in a while.
Like And here's the other, let me stop and say this first, but like I don't feel like this is an interview about me, Peter. I feel like this is like us playing hype man for Alternate, which I'm totally cool with. But we have no shortage of ideas. Like we've had conversations with the creators to say like, if blue sky thinking, like what would we do if we could do anything? And so I would just tell the readers like, there's no shortage of ideas. We know what we could do or would want to do. So get on board with it if you're interested in it. If you're not interested in it, that's cool too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Now to go back and take a hard turn back into interviewing Wes LOCHER.
Oh, he's so boring.
Pish posh.
I spend every day with me. I swear I'm not that interesting.
Well, I don't spend every day with you,
It's
so
true.
okay. So
Thank your
I
lucky
got
stars.
I've
My
only
wife
got
is so jealous.
2 more questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, so this first one, outside of your influence of comic books upon what you're making in comic books, what else would you say is influencing your comic book storytelling? And not comic books, something else outside of that sphere.
Any type of comedic writing. You know, I don't necessarily like. I like stand-up comedy, but I'm not like a stand-up comedy person. Like I have people that I like or that I enjoy. But honestly, it's like so much of the stuff that I end up putting into the comic is just it's just like based on day-to-day life. Like there's things that happen to me or conversations that I have that then I can exaggerate to the extreme and put into the book. And you know, you would read it and you wouldn't think like, oh, this is something that happened to him, but in a way it is, and it has just taken on the shape that it needed to fit into this sci-fi world. But like unfortunately, like I don't have a ton of time to like watch a lot of TV. I don't get to consume as much media as I used to. I'm a father of a young child, so it's like I do watch a lot of cartoons, and there's great stuff in some cartoons. There's some cartoons that have just blown my mind as far as like the quality, and I just go, oh my gosh, like I'm an adult, I just am loving this right now. Like, and I will like push my daughter to watch those shows. She'll be like, I want to watch this. I'm like, no, let's watch this other thing because it's teaching you so much, but really I just want to watch it. So I think children's entertainment is a lot, but also it's like outside of comics, like I write for a full-time job. I work in the video game industry as a writer, and so there's things that I get exposed to there through people that I work with, like whether that be artists or the people that are just kind of sharing things that they just want to share with the group, where they might say, hey, I think you might really like this game, or you might like the approach of this narrative. So I spend a lot of time looking at stuff like that, but I also write books in a freelance capacity, and so I do a lot of research for those books, and so there's things that pop up in there that then send me down other rabbit holes that then I incorporate into Unit 44 as well. Like I just wrote a kid's book about space like a month or two ago, and it's like, oh, I have this thing that I can't wait to put into Unit 44 that I learned that was just so fascinating.
That's great, man. Wow. Yeah, so well, I started off the show telling people how versatile you are. So I mean, I'm not lying. You're a busy dude, and you're a man of many talents. The last question, it does play upon your talents. Now, this is a pet peeve of mine.
Okay.
Lettering.
Yes.
Now you're a solid letterer.
Thanks, man.
You're a really good letterer.
Thank you.
It's oddly rare in the sphere of comic books, and it used to just be kind of in the sphere of like indie comics. Now even mainstream lettering, a lot of the times I see it and I'm like, what is going on?
I've had that I had that same conversation with myself very, very recently.
Yeah, we might have been seeing the same sort of things.
Maybe.
So for those that maybe are either overlooking the importance of lettering in their comic, or maybe they're curious about how to get into lettering and learn more about it, maybe they want to start lettering their own comics, do you have any advice for them?
Sure. You know, read a lot of comics, read a lot of well-lettered comics. Like I'm actually one of those people that, like, when I was kind of teaching myself how to do it, I found like several letterers who I really liked, and I just kind of said, okay, what can I take from like each of their styles that I feel like I like as a reader, because I letter based on how I like to read stuff, and I like, you know, I like balloons that are a certain size, and I like a certain amount of movement. And so I just tried to incorporate the elements that I liked, and other people liked those as well. Clarity should be just like priority. You have to make sure that you understand, um, the spacing and the kerning, and how to like have something that somebody can look at and actually read and not squint at. It's not too small, it's not too big. So just understanding kind of like what makes good lettering in the first place. And the thing that I know we always kind of go to is like, if it's good lettering, you don't notice it. And if it's bad lettering, you see it right away. So I would say, like, if you're reading something and you see like the lettering is terrible, ask yourself why it's terrible and what you don't like about it. Is it that like you can't read it? Is it that it doesn't feel inspired? Does it feel rushed? What is it about it? Does it lack soul? And just kind of look at it, like break it down in your brain and say, okay, psychologically, like what do you like to in your comic book lettering, and then try to kind of deliver that in your own work. And I never set out to like letter stuff for other people. And just as I can make a public announcement that I have officially retired from lettering other people's comics. That
busy.
took a long time. Yeah, I'm busy, but it's funny because when you sign on to a book and then that book goes for like issues and issues and issues, you're like doing this stuff for years. So it's like I had to like announce that I was stopping, and then it was like I still had to letter like 8 more comics from everybody. So that was funny in and of itself. But yeah, I just try to do what I liked and what spoke to me, and I think about like I look back at the comics that I read growing up, like stuff in the 90s, and I'm like, I really don't like this lettering at all. Like there's so much that I hate about it. And so I try to think like, okay, but what do I like? What can inspire me here? And then what are people doing now that can inspire me? Because the other thing that you see is we go through lettering trends a lot. Like, I think like 10 years ago, like everybody was doing these like borderless balloons, and like everybody just like kind of started to do the exact same thing, and it was non-traditional, but I maintain that it was not great non-traditional because it made for a poor reading experience for me at least. And I already have terrible eyesight to start with, so don't make it harder, I guess would be the other thing. But I just try to think about like, what do I like, and then put that out there. But as far as the basics of just learning how to letter, it's all just software programs, and there's stuff on YouTube. There are people that literally, there are letterers that release stuff online. Like Blambot has stuff on his site where you can kind of see how he approaches it. There's courses that you can pay for and take and watch videos and do lessons that will teach you how to do it. Like Comics Experience has several lettering courses. I didn't do that. Like my wife, she has a graphic design background, so one day I was like, hey, I need to letter my comic because I don't have any money to pay anybody. So can you show me like how to make this shape and like make a balloon in Illustrator? And that's how it started. And so she showed me that, and I was like, okay, I know how would I put text in there? And I basically just like sat behind her and made her like letter that comic page. And she was like, she's like, why are you holding me hostage here? I'm like, oh no, let's just do one more. I just want to see how you would do this. And so she basically like spent an afternoon just doing that. And I was like, okay, I have all the foundational knowledge. So now it's just like, do that 10 million times and you might get halfway decent at it.
Yeah, because a lot of it really is about how to play up within the composition.
Yes.
And know how to lead the eye. And
leading the eye is priority. That's my number one complaint. If I see something where I don't know which panel to read next, or I don't know where to go, I will just throw the book across the room and read something else. That is my number one pet peeve. So that's like, if you look at my stuff, it's almost like I do that with like an anal retentive quality. It's like I have to show everybody where to go next.
Yeah, it's the equivalent of reading a novel. If you can't have a leading of the eye that feels natural within the lettering of a comic, it's like reading a novel where all of a sudden there's lettering now at the words on the side of the page, and then upside down and diagonal, and you're like, what the hell do I?
Yeah.
How am I supposed to make heads or tails of what's the next sentence? And so exactly, that stuff is so important, and that's part also of good lettering. And so everything about framing the art, and we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but framing the art and also making sure that you're leading the eye and it's not becoming this cumbersome experience for the reader. And some of that also, it's easier when, of course, you're writing and lettering your own work. Right. But some of that, I see a lot of stuff out there where letterers feel like they are at the mercy of the writer and the editor And sometimes, yes. But I wish there would be letterers that would be a little bit more like, look, you're filling up this massive, or we can't end this word balloon on a 4 or 5 syllable word.
And
All right.
I would do that for people, but the thing that I noticed really quick when I started lettering other people's comics is that I knew that if somebody shared with me up front, like, hey, this is like my first comic, or this is like my first, second, or third comic, like I knew it was going to be like a thing, because they were going to edit it to oblivion. They were going to make those types of mistakes, and I would often take the initiative to like tell them of things that were going to be a problem, and not from like me being a jerk or anything, just me saying, hey, I want to help you, like I want you to understand something that's going to make my life easier, because if you like want to be a professional, like this is something that is just fundamental knowledge that you probably need to know. But it's the same time, it's like if you're lettering someone else's comic, it's not my place to judge the quality of it either. Like I'm not going to say like, hey, your story sucks, so like make it better. I lettered comics that I just absolutely adored and loved, and loved it as a reader, and then I worked on stuff that I would never in a million years read. I was just like, this is terrible writing, but that's okay. That's not my place. If they believe in this project, they're paying me to do this, I'm going to do this to the best of my ability.
I feel ya. That's why I don't really get hired for too many lettering gigs.
You don't have that same restraint.
It's also why I think a lot of people don't tend to like me.
No. People don't like you? Who doesn't like you?
Many people.
Oh, okay. Well,
many people.
I live, like I said, I live in a tiny bubble. So
well, I give tough
like
love when it comes to certain things because I care. And some people don't take that. They take it as like you're trampling all over my ego. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to help you. I'm saying this out of love and respect for your project and what you're doing. People will, yeah.
I've received very little tough love from you over the years, but the times you have done it, I've always appreciated it.
Well, thank you, my friend.
You got it.
And you keep it up, man. I'm so glad to see you getting into another gear with this series, especially when it seemed like all hope was lost and that Unit 44 would have just been those 4 parts, those 4 issues, and that was it. Yeah. I'm so glad to see now you're going to be on issue 10, 6 issues after the fact. And it seems like there's practically almost no end in sight for what you guys are doing, which is fantastic.
It's such a tragic thing. I know we're wrapping up, but it's such a tragic thing too, because the whole reason that it came back was because of this terrible virus that swept the planet, because I got really bored during that time, and I was like, I'm going to write more Unit 44. So without that virus, we wouldn't have more of this book. It's crazy.
There's a silver lining around everything. There really
is.
is. No matter how bad something is sometime, there really is always a silver lining around it, and you got to find that. And I know it sounds cheesy or whatever it is, but it's absolute objective truth. It just depends on whether or not you want to find that silver lining. And it's always good to try your best to find it, because man, life is sure it's hell if you can't and if you don't try to do that. But man, thank you so much, Wes, for being here. Before we do part ways, where can they find you? Where can they go? All that good stuff.
You want like my home address?
Hey, if you want, pizza party at Wes's house.
No, I can't. I can't feed this many people. You can. The best place is probably my website, weslocher.com, where you can find. A lot of people think all I do is Unit 44, but if you go on my website, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this guy does so much stuff, and it's probably all crap, but I should check it out. You can see like the video games I've written. You can see the books I've published. You can see I've written like 6 graphic novels and tons of single issues and tons of shorts. Go check it out. I don't really. I have a newsletter. That's my new favorite thing. Is I have a newsletter that you can sign up for on my website, and I send that out once a month, and that kind of gives you like an update as far as what I'm working on, and I try to talk about writing, craft, and I try to share with people kind of what's going on. So if you genuinely like care about the things that I do and you want to know more about like what else I have going on, then join that. That's probably the best way. But you can follow me on Twitter, and I probably won't post a lot, to be honest with you, because nobody sees my stuff and I don't see anybody else's stuff. I just see advertisements for like balls that you throw in the air and come back to you.
I thought you were gonna say something else there, and I was gonna be
I restrained myself.
I
almost went a different direction. But yeah, that's my website. Look at that.
WesLocher.com. I'm gonna put that in the description of the show. as soon as we end. I neglected to do that. I apologize. So you guys can go to weslocher.com, go check out what Wes has, go sign up for that newsletter, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
And then, of course, and thank you, some person, put in the time and check out, it only takes a couple of minutes, those 4 new issues.
I totally forgot. I'm assuming that like most of the people here in the chat have already backed the campaign, but thank you guys for backing this campaign. Thank you for backing the previous campaigns. Thank you for everything that you've done to let us continue telling these stories. It really means a lot to me. I know it means a lot to Peter and the rest of the creators, but we literally could not do this without you. So thank you for enjoying our books, and thank you for be willing to support something that's outside of like the big 2. I mean, it's huge. It really means the world to us.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, so if you guys haven't had a chance to check it out yet, we are at the 60% mark for the campaign right now. So make sure to get in on it. There's 16 days left. Check out Blood Realm number 14, Horace H. Hoover number 3 of 5, and of course, Unit 44 number 9 and 10.
Get on them. They're wacky.
They are wacky, but they're very good.
What do you think? Like when I send you a new issue, like what expectation do you?
I'm excited every time.
Are you excited?
Okay. I'm always excited to get those issues in because I don't know where you're going half the time in a good way.
There's usually like a conversation between Alex and I where we go like, "Will Peter publish this?" And we go, "I don't know. We'll send it in and see what happens." That's kind of our MO at this point.
It's exciting every time when you guys are sending something. I'm always curious as to like what's going to happen next within this issue because I know it's even if you introduce a thing like the werewolf story, issue 10, even if you introduce that, there's a million werewolf stories, right?
Right.
But I'm always like, Wes and Alex have a nice offbeat way of telling these stories and working in Hatch and Gibson, the Area 51 agents, for those that don't know, into the story and how the event plays off of them and how they play off the event. Right. That you could put the same whatever, werewolf, vampire, zombie, whatever you've heard of a million times, and you're going to find a unique, funny, interesting way to tell that story and incorporate and play off of them. So yeah, whatever you guys send, and then when you guys don't do anything that's been done a bunch of times before, and you throw in something new, like with them going to hell, or the Grim Reaper in issue 8, or the Cult in issue 5. That was a lot of fun too. It's interesting, man, every single time. And I think that's the best thing you can really try to aim for with your stories, too, is to always try to tell something interesting.
I want people to always say, what are they going to do this time? So
exactly.
I love that you feel that way. So that makes me happy. Because at the end of the day, I'm really only trying to please Alex and you. That's it.
Well, keep it up, man, because you're pleasing a lot more than us.
Cool.
All right, everybody, thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate y'all in the chat tonight. And tomorrow night I'll be back at 9 o'clock Eastern with Robert Clotworthy, the voice of Ancient Aliens. Is it possible? Can it be? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes. Robert Clotworthy returns tomorrow night, 9 o'clock Eastern. Hope to see you guys then. It's going to be a good conversation. Yeah, tune in. Same comic book radio time, same comic book radio channel. See you guys then. Everybody have a great night and an even better tomorrow. All the best.